In this special episode, we're diving about something that might just change how you think about automation in web applications. It's called Pipeflow-PHP, and here's why it matters. Imagine you run a website that needs to do something automatically every day. Maybe you're publishing content, processing data, sending emails, or connecting different services together. Traditionally, if you wanted to change how any of this works, you'd need a developer to dive into the code, make changes, test everything, and redeploy every single time. So small tweaks. Now imagine if your content manager, your marketing person, or even you as a business owner could adjust that logic yourself by editing a simple, readable configuration file. No coding required, no waiting for developers, no deployment headaches. That's exactly what Pipeflow PHP enables. So what is Pipeflow? At its core, is a pipeline engine for PHP applications. Think of a pipeline like an assembly line. You've got raw materials going in at one end, and at each station along the line, something specific happens to those materials. By the end, you have a finished product. In Pipeflow, instead of physical stations, you have what are called stages. Each stage is a small focused unit of work. One stage might fetch some data, another might transform that data, another might send an email or create a blog post. The magic happens when you change these stages together in sequence. Data flows from one stage to the next, getting enriched and transformed along the way until your automation is complete. Here's where it gets interesting. Most automation systems require you to write code to define these workflows. Pipeflow lets you describe the entire pipeline in XML. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. XML? Really? But stay with me here because this is actually brilliant. The XML configuration is incredibly easy to read. Even if you've never seen XML before, you can look at a Pipeflow configuration and understand what's happening. You can see the stages listed in order. You can see what each stage does. You can see how data flows through the system. It reads almost like plain English. Let me give you a concrete example. The creator of Pipeflow, marcosiino, runs a website called pagine.colare.it. Every single day, this website automatically generates and publishes coloring pages for children using artificial intelligence. The entire process runs on autopilot through a WordPress plugin that integrates Pipeflow. The pipeline does something like this. First, it randomly selects themes and subjects for the coloring pages. Maybe it's animals, maybe it's vehicles, maybe it's a holiday themed content. Then it crafts prompts and sends them to OpenAI's API to generate the actual coloring page images. Next, it creates descriptive text for each page. Then it handles all the WordPress specific tasks like creating the post, saving the images, setting categories and tags, and finally publishing everything. Now, here's the powerful part. During Christmas season, Marco wants the coloring pages to be holiday themed. He doesn't need to call a developer. He doesn't need to touch any PHP code. He just opens the XML configuration from the WordPress admin panel and adjusts the logic. Maybe he adds a condition that says, if we're in December, prioritize Christmas themes. Maybe he tweaks the prompts to include more winter elements. Simple changes to the XML and the automation adapts. He's got another site called firebarello.it that does something similar but for fairy tales. Every day, new fairy tales with cover images completely automated. Same principle, the pipeline handles the entire workflow, and anyone on the team can adjust how it works by editing the XML. But this isn't just about content generation. Pipeflow can handle any kind of automation you can imagine. You could build pipelines for data processing jobs that run overnight, extracting data from one system, cleaning it up, transforming it, and loading it into another system. You can orchestrate marketing workflows that enrich customer data, call external APIs, and keep your CRM synchronized. You could automate editorial workflows in any content management system where posts flow through different stages of review, transformation, and publication. The key insight here is that Pipeflow is headless. It doesn't come with a user interface. Instead, it's designed to be integrated into whatever system you're already using. If you're running WordPress, you can build a plugin that exposes Pipeflow and lets you edit pipelines from the WordPress admin. If you have a custom CMS, you can add the simple text editor where users can modify the XML. If you want to get fancy, You could even build a visual node-based editor that generates the XML behind the scenes. Let's talk about how it actually works under the hood. Every pipeline operates on something called a context. Think of the context as a shared notebook that all the stages can read from and write to. The pipeline starts, and the first stage might write some initial data into the context. Maybe it writes a variable called user ID or product name. The next stage reads that variable, does something with it, and maybe writes a new variable into the context. Each stage builds on what came before, and by the end of the pipeline, your context contains all the accumulated data and transformations. Pipeflow comes with a catalog of built in stages that handle common tasks. There are stages for setting values, performing calculations, making conditional decisions, looping through lists, calling HTTP APIs, and more. But the real power comes from custom stages. You can create your own stages that do anything your application needs. Want to integrate with a specific service your company uses? Build a custom stage for it. Need to implement unique business logic? Build a custom stage. Want to connect to generative AI services? Build a custom stage. Once you build those custom stages and registered them with Pipeflow, they become available just like the built in ones. You can use them in any pipeline, mix them with built in stages, and your non technical team members can incorporate them into workflows just by adding them to the XML configuration. The control flow capabilities are particularly noteworthy. You can have conditional logic where stages only run if certain conditions are met. You can have loops where the pipeline processes lists of items one by one. You can have nested pipelines where one pipeline calls another. This means you are not limited to simple linear workflows. You can build sophisticated branching logic that adapts based on the data it encounters. Let's talk about practical deployment. Your application loads the XML configuration and feeds it to Pipeflow. Pipeflow parses the XML, sets up the pipeline, and prepares it for execution. When you're ready to run the pipeline, you just call the execute method. You can run pipelines on demand when a user clicks a button, or you can schedule them with cron jobs to run automatically at specific times. You can even provide initial data to the pipeline if you need to pass information from your application into the automation. Because the pipeline definition is just data, not code, you can store these XML configurations anywhere. Put them in your database, save them to files, version them in Git, let users upload and download them. The possibilities are endless. And because it's XML, you could theoretically generate pipelines programmatically or even use AI to help users build pipelines based on natural language descriptions. Now, pipeline isn't trying to replace everything. If you have a simple automation that never changes, you might not need this level of flexibility. Sometimes hard coding a workflow in PHP is perfectly fine, but for automations that evolve, that need frequent adjustments, or that you want non developers to be able to maintain, Pipeflow offers something genuinely valuable. The project is open source under the BSD 3 clause license, which means you can use it freely in both open source and commercial projects. Marco has been developing and using it in production on his own websites, and he has just shared it with the wider community on Hacker News. The project is still relatively new in terms of public visibility, so there's plenty of room for the community to contribute. Marco is explicitly looking for feedback, new built in stages, bug fixes, and real world usage stories. He's even planning to port the concept to other programming languages beyond PHP. What makes this particularly exciting is the philosophy behind it. We often talk about empowering non technical users, but what we usually mean is giving them simplified controls or preset options. Pipeflow takes a different approach. It says, here's the full power and flexibility of a programming workflow, but expressed in a format that anyone can read and modify. It doesn't dumb things down, it makes complexity accessible. Think about what this means for teams. Your developers can build the custom stages that encapsulate your business logic and integrations. But once those stages exist, your content managers, marketers, operations people, and product managers can combine and configure these stages to create the exact workflows they need. The developers aren't bottlenecked. The non technical folks aren't limited. Everyone can work at the level that makes sense for them. This is the kind of tool that might not make headlines, but it solves a very real problem in a very elegant way. If you're building web applications, especially ones that involve automation, content management, or data processing, Pipeflow-PHP is worth exploring. The GitHub repository has full documentation, examples, and everything you need to get started. And that's the wrap up. If you found this interesting, please help me by subscribing to this channel. I'm your host from Ataria News Channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.